And one more question about a member of Congress, a new Republican member of Congress, Trump loyalist Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's long embraced conspiracy theories like QAnon, voiced support for executing Nancy Pelosi. Is she fit to serve, and should she be on the Education Committee?
Well, that's, first of all, the people of her district elected her, and that should mean a lot. They elected her, and she's going to run for re-election, and she'll be accountable for what she said and her actions. And then,
given her history, is she really fit to serve?
I'm not going to answer that question as to whether she's fit to serve because she believes in something that everybody else does not accept. I reject that, but she's going to stand for re-election. I don't think we ought to punish people from a disciplinary standpoint, a party standpoint, because they think something a little bit different. We have got to make sure that we don't divide our party. I'm more troubled by someone going in and opposing Liz Cheney because she took a different position than many others in the party. That's the kind of thing that tears our party apart. We need to not start primarying everyone just because we don't like how they handled things during the last 2 or 3 weeks post-election.
But Governor, you say you shouldn't go after someone because they think of something a little bit different. She believes in conspiracy theories, that there are pedophiles running Washington. That's not just a little bit different.
I reject that, and I would not vote for her. I would not vote for her. The second question is, should the House of Representatives make a disciplinary call on her? I'm not going to get in the middle of that. They're going to have to make that judgment. But, you know, whenever you have a broad diversity of the party, you reject the extreme elements. It's not mainstream GOP, and that's what we've got to get back to. We got to have a regard for those people that supported Donald Trump. We want, because they have a message, they have a concern, but at the same time, we don't want to gloss over the terrible actions that happened at the Capitol. We need to hold people accountable for that. That is critically important.
Asa Hutchinson is the Republican governor of a dark red Republican state who was elected by a 33-point margin. I'm pretty sure he can acknowledge that calling for the execution of Nancy Pelosi is a bad thing without any blowback. I'm pretty sure he'll still get reelected. And yet the fact that he isn't even willing to say that is a testament to just how feckless this party has become. Bear in mind too, this is supposed to be a mainstream Republican, and yet if the mainstream wing of the party isn't capable of condemning anything said by the radical or extremist wing of the party, then that's a tacit endorsement of it. And so what this proves then is that Marjorie Taylor Greene and the rest of these lunatics aren't actually on the fringes, but rather, this is what the Republican Party is. If you're not willing to condemn it, then you support it. Now, the excuse that Hutchinson leans on is this idea that he can't even acknowledge that calling for Nancy Pelosi's execution or pledging allegiance to QAnon is bad because the voters of Greene's district voted for her. And so that's the final word. By this logic, would Asa Hutchinson refuse to condemn Hitler because, hey, he was elected as part of a referendum in 1934, so the voters can just decide? Just because someone was elected doesn't mean you can't have the backbone to still stand up and simply say, this woman is dangerous and QAnon is a BS conspiracy theory whose adherents aren't fit to serve in our government. It's not that difficult. Although I guess if your party is more interested in kowtowing to Donald Trump and the lunatic fringes than actually having an ounce of integrity, I can see where Hutchinson might run into some problems. Hutchinson also claims that Greene shouldn't face disciplinary measures just because she, quote, thinks something a little bit different. Marjorie Taylor Greene expressed support for the execution of the Speaker of the House. She indicated support for hanging Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, and that Clinton drank the blood of children. She called Parkland a false flag. She harassed a teenage school shooting survivor on the street.
David, why are you supporting the red flag laws? If Scott Peterson, the resource officer at Parkland, had done his job, then Nicholas Cruz wouldn't have killed anybody in your high school, or at least protected them. Why are you supporting red flag gun laws that attack our Second Amendment rights? And why are you using kids as a barrier? Do you not know how to defend your stance? Look, I'm an American citizen. I'm a gun owner. I have a concealed carry permit. I carry a gun for protection for myself, and you are using your lobby and the money behind it and the kids to try to take away my Second Amendment rights. You don't have anything to say for yourself? You can't defend your stance? How did you get over 30 appointments with senators? How'd you do that? How did you get major press coverage on this issue? And how did you get kids? Why do you use kids? Why kids? You know, if school zones were protected with security guards with guns, there would be no mass shootings at schools. Do you know that? The best way to stop a bad guy with a gun is with a good guy with a gun. But yet you're attacking our Second Amendment. And you have nothing to say. No words. So I'm walking. He's got nothing to say. Sad.
Yep, just your standard, thinks a little bit different behavior, chasing down a school shooting survivor on the street and videotaping it. So if you think all of these ideas are just, quote, a little bit different, then you might just be telling on yourself. In reality, I'm pretty sure that most of us can safely say that the ideas espoused by Marjorie Taylor Greene are more than a little different and can acknowledge that they aren't innocent but dangerous. And those who believe in these conspiracies have already been shown to manifest their distaste for the victims of these conspiracies with real-world consequences. So no, this isn't just a matter of her ideas being different, it's a matter of her ideas being radical, and Hutchinson's refusal to condemn them is exactly why those ideas are spreading like they are. And look, that's not to say that we shouldn't respect our democratic institutions, and yes, the people of her district did elect her, but two things could be true. You could respect our institutions and take the bare minimum step to recognize that if a person is dangerous, which she is, then we're not powerless. If the founders didn't want any recourse when an official is found to be unfit, they wouldn't have included those tools in our Constitution, but they did, and they've been used in the past. We've had recalls of governors, 15 senators, and 5 lawmakers have been expelled from Congress, and as you know, presidents have been impeached and faced removal as well. So you can respect our institutions while also acknowledging the fact that those very institutions have processes for removing people who turn out to be a clear and present danger to those around them. So at this point, we shouldn't pretend that there's any difference between the far-right fringes of the GOP and the mainstream. If the so-called establishment Republicans aren't lifting a finger to differentiate themselves from the extremists, then why should we? Why should we do them the service of pretending that they're somehow any different from the conspiracy theorists when they themselves aren't willing to go out on that limb? If the so-called mainstream Republicans want to be able to say that they're any different from the Marjorie Taylor Greenes of the party, then they might want to try actually being different from the Marjorie Taylor Greenes of the party. Until then, by virtue of the cowardice displayed by Hutchinson and the rest of the party, the only reasonable explanation for their failure to condemn the lunatics in their own party is because they stand with them, and it's imperative that we remember that. While you're here, please check out my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen. I take a deep dive into the top stories of the week, and I also interview major players in the world of politics, like Kamala Harris, Adam Schiff, Nancy Pelosi, Pete Buttigieg, Katie Porter, Al Franken, Cory Booker, Jamie Harrison, Mary Trump, and many more. Again, that's No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, available anywhere you listen to podcasts.